Okay, so hello, Women of AR. Steph here. That's how I always start my recordings now. And I'm here with our other Women of AR mentors. I'll have them introduce themselves as we go along. And we're going to record this. So if you have to step away, no worries. We'll post it up on Facebook when we're done. Everybody will be able to see it. We were just before we started recording talking about these photos. If you're friends with Mark Latanzi, who wrote Squiggly Lines, you will have seen by now the photos of his feet after this big trek in the snow and sub-zero temperatures that they did, and he got some pretty severe frostbite. So we're all hoping he doesn't lose too many toes, and talked about what a good segue that is into the topic that we're going to cover, which is what I'm calling forecast adventure, because you know the old saying, there's no bad weather, only bad clothing choices or bad gear choices. So we're going to talk about how to make good gear choices, good clothing choices. And the way we've set this up is we're going to set up kind of some scenarios so that you can apply what we're talking about to the races or the training events that are actually on your calendar. And so we're going to go through sort of progressively worsening weather as we go and longer races, right? Because the risk is higher the longer the race and the worse the weather. So we're going to kind of, you'll see this arc as we go. And I'm going to start off, I'm talking about sort of the easiest scenario we've got. It's an 8-hour race. It's 26 degrees at the start and it's warming up. And that's what makes it good, right? It's going to get warmer. So it's going to warm up to 40 degrees. The forecast is dry, sunny skies, not so bad, right? And so in that sort of scenario, I'm going to be talking mainly about layering. That's going to be the biggest key to me being comfortable through this race. And I've actually got some photos here that I will share with you. So let me do a screen share. Here we go. All right, so 26 degrees at the race start. This is probably what I'm going to be wearing. 26 degrees to me is pretty cold. And of course, you know, it goes without saying that everyone has different tolerances for cold. And so there's going to be a lot of variability. You can see my teammate. So I'm on the right in this photo in the green puffy jacket. My teammate Sarah's on the left. And you can see I'm wearing a much heavier jacket over top than Sarah is. And that's because I have a little less tolerance for cold than she does. Or I don't know, she's just tougher than I am. She's thicker skinned. But so 26 degrees at the start is pretty cold for me. So I'm going to be starting off in this Nano Puff. It's a pretty thin Nano Puff jacket. And the most important thing, you can also see that I've got a shirt on under there. That's going to be a thermal shirt. And so layering is really the most important thing. And I'm sure at some point you will hear the word layering come out of the mouth of every one of the mentors as they go through this. But in this instance, I'm thinking about having a really thin outer layer because I'm going to be taking that off. And you can see I undoubtedly started this race with a beanie hat on, and I'll pull over another photo here that shows what I look like later in the day when it gets more to that 40 and sunny. But I probably started with a beanie hat on, and it's probably in my backpack at this point. So I'm thinking about layering in this context in terms of what I'm going to take off. And so one of the things I'm going to think about is making sure I've got a pack with enough room in it to fit those layers in. For a 6-hour race, I'm going to be going with a pretty small pack. So one of the things to think about is as I'm taking these layers off when it's warming up through the day, I need to make sure I've got enough room in my pack to get those layers in. So I'm going to start with that. I'm probably going to have a buff on that I can take off. I'm going to have a hat on that I can take off, but then I can put those back on later in the day if I get chilled on the paddle or on the bike. You know, obviously none of these are cotton. Everything needs to be either wool or a synthetic fiber. We never want to wear cotton, certainly in the cold. I'm usually wearing mittens instead of gloves. You can see I've got these honking big mittens on my hands here. And that's because I suffer from Raynaud's. And so keeping my hands and feet warm is really critical, and mittens are certainly much warmer than gloves. So if it's down to 26 degrees, I'm going to be wearing these big mittens. Once it gets warmer later in the day and it's 40 degrees, if we're moving consistently, I'm probably going to take those off. They're going to be too warm once you get up to that kind of temperature. I also would, for a 26-degree race start, think about putting on either some petroleum jelly or some kind of synthetic cream that I can put on my feet and on my hands, which are a good barrier against dampness and against cold, as well as, of course, for chafing and chapping, that sort of thing. So it's kind of an insulating layer and really good, especially for helping keep your feet warmer. And then for a 6-hour race, I'm going to carry a little tube of chapstick, probably somewhere on here or in my pack. I've got a tube of chapstick, which I can reapply out in the field for chafing, that sort of thing. And then lastly, if it's going to be 40 degrees and dry, sunny skies, then I also am going to need to think about sun protection, especially once we get out on the water. So I'm going to have a small, a small thing of sunscreen in my pack. Here's my other. This is probably more what I'm going to look like when it gets to be 40 degrees and it's sunny. And you can see, again, I've got layers here. I've put my beanie cap back on, but I've taken off the big nano puff. So yeah, that's what it's looking like. And again, for an 8-hour race, less risk there. You're not going to probably be so far from home that you can get in big trouble, but it can still be pretty darn uncomfortable. And of course, if you're not moving, if you get injured or you're lost or whatever reason, 40 degrees can feel pretty cold even with the sun out. So still important to think about things like that and make sure that you're ready. So we will move to, oh, and I should have said at the start, if you have any questions, feel free to post those up in the chat and we'll all take turns kind of monitoring. So if you've got any questions as we go along, feel free to ask those, put them in the chat and we'll try to get those addressed. And then our next scenario, I'm going to turn over to Barb, and Barb is going to be talking about, this scenario is going to be a 12-hour race. You're starting with a temperature of 36 degrees, heavy rain, and it just never lets up. So Barb's going to talk about how she would tackle that kind of scenario and what kind of gear and clothing she'd have.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about such a lovely scenario. I went looking for photos of that. And, when you have that kind of, you don't take pictures. You're just not stopping to take pictures. So I don't have any photos. Oh, well,
what about that?
That was Florida freezing, putting everything I had on scenario.
I thought that kind of looked like 36 and raining.
Yeah, yeah. Let me talk through that photo. I'd be happy to do that. First of all, where I would start off is I would be wearing a merino. One thing I don't know if a lot of people know about, and I want to have a caveat also, is that some of this stuff can get really, really expensive. And there are a couple of places that I've been able to score some screaming deals on what would normally, as long as you don't mind it like being orange, but then orange is my favorite color. But like Steep and Cheap, Sierra Trading Post, sometimes even Groupon has some good brand names, and also TJ Maxx. Sometimes I just hop on their website and put in some of my favorite brands or what I'm looking for. And I found an awesome Under Armour fleece run top for like $5. I mean, stuff like that. So it doesn't always have to be expensive. So the things I'm talking about are things that I kind of shopped around for. So 36 and oh, thank you, Abby. I appreciate that. I'm sure we've all found our go-tos. And so I'm not saying what I'm saying. Yeah. And sometimes even REI, their outlet, has some good stuff, or their secondhand stuff is good. So 36 and raining, I just start out wearing, I have a merino camisole bra that was made, it's made by Icebreaker. I don't know if they even make it anymore because I've been desperately looking for a second one and I haven't found it. But if you can get a merino bra, that makes people are like, why? That has got to be terrible. It's not. And it keeps you warm. And because it's merino, even though it's wet, it'll keep you warm. And then the next layer would be, I not to get too personal, I don't wear underwear, but I did splurge this winter and buy a pair of Icebreaker merino underwear because when I go running in the winter, I wear a skirt, which I'll show you later. But I don't, sometimes I don't want to bother with the skirt, especially if I'm going through the woods. And then next layer, top to bottom, I would be leaning in on, trying to have some kind of waterproof cap. An example I have, excuse me, I have like show and tell here. So hang on just a second. Oh, did that not make it upstairs? Rats. All right, it didn't make it up. I have a little cap that I actually, if you can buy this product called Nick Wax, and it does weatherproofing. And I swear by it. And so I just use a beanie cap and then I put the Nick Wax on it and then it becomes water resistant. I'll have a couple of buffs because they're light and they will still keep you warm, especially I like a brand, it's called Turtle Fur. This one happens to have Topo lines on it. And Turtle Fur you can usually get at a discount and it's a really good company. And they have different weights of buffs and they are like fleece lined. And so even if it's wet, it'll still keep you warm. Then going on down, I'll have a merino top on. And then I'll wear, I'll try and have some kind of vest on for core warmth. And then I'll have a raincoat on over that. So you can kind of see in this, I have what you don't see. Well, you do see it is I'm wearing arm warmers. I must have put them over my jacket. I was so cold. I remember being freezing. That's why we were in the gas station because we were just so cold. And then I had a raincoat on and then you can wear rain pants. I'm not a huge fan of rain pants unless I'm in the boat. I really struggle moving in the woods wearing them, and that's just for me. So what I do is I Nick Wax a pair of thicker tights. The winter tights I have that I've been able to get at like Sierra Trading Post are North Face and Under Armour, and they've been very warm and super great as long as I keep moving. And what also helps is I wear, instead of merino socks, I wear alpaca socks, tall alpaca socks, and then another pair of socks, usually over that. They're called D-Feet Woolly Bullies. I too, Steph, have rain-ons. And so I have to really protect my feet and my hands. And so what I wear on my hands when it's cold and wet is I have merino glove liners. They're super thin. And then I will wear an appropriate glove over that. And then I also have these gloves that are they're wind and waterproof and they go over everything. Like I could be wearing a pair of gloves and then I can put this on over it. And then it keeps my hands really dry and warm. And I think I got these for and they're Gore-Tex. I picked them up on clearance for like $15. So, and they're worth every penny.
What brand are those?
Those are REI Gore-Tex. The REI Gore-Tex over glove. They're great for winter biking, snowshoeing. I mean, I use them all the time in the winter time. I had them when I was at Pokar a couple of weeks ago. It's just it's not great by itself, but if you're wearing a liner, and where the merino liner comes in is that you're constantly having to do something. Well, not constantly, every now and again you need to do something. So I can take off my glove and I have the merino liner over my hand to protect my hand for that few minutes. Because what happens with rain-ons, it happened to me when I was racing in Alabama in November and it got very cold. How it manifests for me is it gets really cold. I can't warm it up. I have to literally shove my hands down my pants. And then when it starts to come back, it's like shooting pain through my hands and I can't even think. And so, and so I do everything to prevent it from happening. So, then on my feet, I mean, I just generally, people talk about wearing Gore-Tex shoes. I personally don't prefer that because it keeps moisture in. And so I go with a breathable shoe. I'd rather wear 2 pairs of socks and a breathable shoe. So I think I saw a question, but I don't know if it's specific to what I was talking about. Oh, and then I want to talk about map marking too, and packing my pack. So I'll do that and then I'll answer any questions, stuff that you might see. So waterproofing gear inside of your pack, you're in a 12-hour race. Again, you're not going to be carrying as much stuff, a little bit, probably, mandatory gear, a little bit more food. I would recommend swapping out buffs and hats because if your head starts to get too cold and if your things are too saturated, I recommend just swapping it out, even though you're wet. I just feel rich when I put something on dry when I'm soaking wet. And it'll get wet, but that's the way I do it. Then, but waterproofing gear inside the pack is really important. Ziplocs can do a lot, but they only go so far. And so I recommend getting, if you don't have them already, getting you can buy like packages of 3 dry bags and test them before you take them out and expect them to work. The way you do that is I actually test mine by putting a toilet paper in a dry bag and then submerging it underwater and just to make sure it works. And then I try to make sure I nick wax them. Again, I'm back to the nick waxing to make sure that everything stays dry. Map marking and management can be really challenging. You can order online military grade marking pens that even when it's wet, they'll still write and they're permanent so they don't rub off. I find they're better than Sharpies for some, I don't know what it is, but they're better than Sharpies. I didn't grab those, so I don't have I don't have them to show you, but those are really, really good. And then map management is, just the best you can. I just try not to, I mean, I get it. In some races, you have to take the map out to remark it or do something. But if you can treat, if you can seal it with contact, I haven't used contact paper in forever because I've used the C-Line map bags and they're very reliable as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I've had a map like floating in water in a canoe and it's still fine. So, and just a lot of it is just grit, it's gonna stink. And making sure that you think about when you're out there too. I mean, when it's wet and it just keeps going on and on and on, and it's 36 degrees, things are just going to get slick and very muddy. And so thinking about that as well. Starting off with a lot of rain gear. I'm not sure you would be able to stay dry because of sweat. And so that's why I recommend, the tights, treated tights. If you're really worried about being cold, feel free to, wear a pair of rain pants over, but I would be concerned about getting too warm, quite frankly. I could see how for safety's sake, it would be a good idea to carry some rain pants because if you do start getting really cold, putting those on would warm you up if you got moving again. So that's my advice on a 12-hour 36 with heavy rain.
Okay, we can post up a link to, we'll find the markers, an online source for the markers, and we'll post up a link for those in the group.
Yeah.
The question that was asked, Barb, was, do you layer any pants over your winter leggings? And I think for a 36 degree, you're only going to have one layer on
I'm
bottom.
going to only have one layer. Now, if I expect to not be moving quickly because of the terrain, there's a lot of scrambling and not being a lot of bushwhacking. I had invested several years ago in a pair. They're actually men's icebreaker merino shorts, and they were like, I'm very budget conscious, so it's probably like $20 or something. And those have been a nice layer underneath, because like the socks go up to under my knee and then the shorts go to over my knee. They're really warm though. And so I think I would have to be moving pretty slowly in 36-degree rain or be in upper teens temperatures to pull those out. So
Yeah, I even though I'm pretty cold sensitive, it's got to be really cold for me to want to have 2 layers on bottom. Sounds like you're saying.
yeah. And then also I have a pair of winter gaiters that I might entertain wearing just for protection. Well, no, yeah, I would probably wear them in the 36 rain because my speed gaiters would be just too thin to stay warm. So you can buy full gaiters. They're awesome. It's like another warmth layer too. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Barb. We'll move
Yeah, thank
to
you.
Anna and Casey. I actually have not seen Casey join us. So Anna, you're going to have to fly solo on this one. I have full confidence in you. And Anna is going to talk about a 24-hour race where it is 46 degrees at the start, quite balmy by her Wisconsin standards.
Heat wave, yeah.
Yeah, I should have said, so Barb is from Michigan. I'm from Kentucky. Anna is from Wisconsin. So Anna knows cold, and 46 degrees at the race start. She's going to be in a t-shirt and shorts. But temperatures dropping with an overnight low of 21. So why don't you talk, Anna, about that scenario?
Yeah, so I actually went for a snowshoe run with my husband Tim today, and he actually wore shorts. It was 30 degrees out, and I overdressed for it. But I have to have a caveat. I do like racing cold. I don't have Raynaud's. I'm pretty cold intolerant. I tend to get cold really easily, but in terms of racing, I love to race cold. I would much rather race cold than race hot. So I tend to wear the same thing if I'm racing in 100-degree weather as I would wear if I'm racing in like 30 to 40 degree weather, except with a couple of exceptions. So I would, if it's going to be starting out at 46 and going down below freezing to 21, I usually focus on core temperature. So I won't worry about my legs. I will worry about keeping my core a little bit warmer and then keeping my ears, my fingers, and my toes warm. So I have kind of this, it's like a little thermal tank top with a built-in bra. I will only bust this out if it's below freezing. Otherwise, I just race in a normal bra and then my normal racing top. So for doing a 24-hour race, it's going to drop below freezing. I will do this. It's a little extra insulation. It wicks well. It keeps my core warm. And I've read that keeping your core warm is like the first key to keeping your extremities warm. If your core gets cold, it's like game over. So I will do that. And I find most of the gear that I wear. So like in this kind of race, I would wear my usual race gear over that. So that's usually a Rail Riders top, which I also wear in 100-degree weather. Super breathable. It's ventilated sides. If it wasn't going to drop below freezing, I would probably wear this. Since this race is going to drop below freezing at night, I'll probably just wear like a really lightweight thermal base layer or like a long sleeve race top that you might get at a race. You know, nothing fancy. I would probably wear that over my Rail Riders just because the Rail Riders is so thin, and that's just because it's going to drop down to 21 degrees. I would wear my tri shorts, and then I would either wear like my regular orienteering pants, or which you can see are, I would also wear this in 100-degree weather too. They're very see-through. Or what I find in winter racing and cold weather, I tend to lean a lot more towards ski clothing. So like my favorite jacket to wear in winter racing and my favorite pants are actually ski pants. So like Salomon wears these, you can't see very well, sorry. They're men's, but they're like this stretchy, really lightweight athletic material. They're loose fitting, they're not tights. I live in these in the wintertime. Like I will bike in these, I'll run in these. When it's colder, it's below freezing. I'm not a huge tights fan. I know a lot of people do race in tights. If I'm gonna wear my thermal tights and there's snow, I will usually always wear knee-high gaiters because the snow kicks up and it cakes to the backs of your legs. And so REI has this really great pair of knee-high gaiters. I snowshoe in that, I winter run in that, if I'm gonna be wearing tights. If I'm gonna be wearing full pants, I probably wouldn't do these, but otherwise, like there gets to be too much snow on the back of your legs. I will, let's see, if it's gonna drop to 21, I might be racing in like a ski jacket. This one is by Salomon. It is breathable. I have ski jackets that are not breathable. I would not recommend those. It'll just trap sweat and that's even worse. But this one's pretty ventilated. Again, ski equipment is like awesome for winter adventure racing. And then for head and fingers and toes, like Barbara said, I'll usually do like a couple of buffs. I like to cut my buffs in half, especially when I wear them on my head. I find that if it's a full buff, it tends to be a little bit too warm. So, and they're super versatile. If you get too hot, you just wrap them around your wrist, you put them around your neck. So I'll have one like around my neck as maybe a face covering if I need it, one for my ears. They're just super versatile. So I will do that. I usually never race with a full beanie cap. I usually never race with a puffy jacket ever. Just because or like a rain jacket, like maybe if you're like in extreme conditions and you're like in danger, maybe I'll have one of those, but otherwise like I'm usually planning on just keeping moving. And as long as you keep moving, even if you're cold, like eventually you're going to warm up. So like heading out on the bike, you just know like you're going to be cold until you hit the first hill and then you're gonna be fine. So at least for me, I will usually just tough it out through feeling cold, knowing that like eventually if I just keep going, I'm gonna warm up. Let's see, for hands, I have a few different glove options that I like. And I was definitely taking notes on Barbara's stuff because I'm sure there's gonna be a lot I'm gonna learn from the rest of you ladies. But like for running, I love these little running gloves. They have it's a little glove and it has a little windproof cover to it. So I usually am not a fan of gloves. I usually always go toward mittens, but these are kind of nice in between. And they have that little windproof thing that just fits right over it. And it's great. If my hands get really cold, I'll take all my fingers out and I'll just make a fist inside the glove and then just run like that. Or like Barbara said, if I feel things are getting really cold, I will take my hands out completely and put them down my pants, because that's like the only way, if you're like starting out cold, to like get them heated up. And then eventually, I think with time, like they do eventually warm up, hopefully. But yeah, so I would probably bring these for this sort of a race. I might also pack this if it was going to be in a transition, and I knew it was there. These are bike gloves called lobster claws. You can see they're it's kind of a cross between a mitten and a glove. You've got 2 fingers and 2 fingers like that, so it's great for braking, but it also kind of keeps your fingers more warm. I'm probably going to, I guess we'll get to this in the really, really cold weather stuff later on, but I'm probably going to invest in some heated gloves and heated socks later on, just because my hands still get cold. And then I just wanted to mention these for those of you who like gloves. These are, my light isn't great. I can send a brand if you're interested. These are the gloves that that Yoga Slackers raced in Patagonia with, and they love them and they worked really well. They're just kind of really light thermal gloves, so you have a lot of dexterity. I don't think these would work for me. I think they would be a little bit too thin, but if you're going like super light, just bare minimum, these would be great too. And I can, when I have better lighting, figure out what they are, but micro wipe, I think. Anyway, so that, let me see if I'm missing anything. I would probably do double socks, just 2 pairs of thin socks. And I'm a huge Salomon fan. I've tried other brands. These just work well for me. I do the Gore-Tex ones. I know Barbara doesn't. I do use them. These are great for snow. Also, they've got the little cleats. And I do a half size up, which is just nice to have for adventure racing anyway, because if you're doing anything long distance in the heat, your feet can swell sometimes, but it's also nice for double socks. So I would race in these. And I think, so that's what I would wear for a 24-hour race, 46-degree race start, 21 overnight. And then keeping hands functional, I think we talked about that. And then hydration and nutrition in the extreme cold. So hydration, you're not gonna need to drink as much as you usually do. You're gonna need to drink less. Sometimes it's nice to have some like higher calorie mix in your drink if you tolerate that. Because I think in the cold, you need more calories, you need to eat more and drink less. And whenever I race cold, so if I'm racing really hot, like in really hot weather, I usually don't do a lot of solid foods or a lot of like protein. I'll usually just stick to like gels and goos and maple syrup. But if I'm racing really cold, I usually steer more away from that. Like I'll pack a few things, like maybe a few maple syrups or something, but I'll stick more to like real food, like things with more substance to them, like a burrito or like peanut butter and jelly or something, you know, something like a little bit that sticks a little bit more with you when I'm racing cold. And I think that's all I've got for this.
Okay, cool. I've got some more questions for you, but I think they can wait until we get to the below 20 degrees, the
Yes,
super extreme.
I have more to say about like extreme cold weather gear and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, good deal. So let's move on. Thanks, Anna. Let's move on to Abby and Kate. And now they have brought their own little slideshow, I think. They're going to start by talking about multi-day racing, where you've got potentially significant altitude changes. We've set up a high of 65, low of 32, windy ridge tops. So you've got, you know, all of these big swings. And Abby is over in Pennsylvania. Kate is up in Maine. So they know all about hilly and mountainous terrain with lots of temperature changes. And they both are experienced multi-day adventure racers. So
yeah, though I have to say, compared to like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Maine, I feel like such a weather wuss. I live in Philadelphia. Like, yeah. So I've learned a lot from what y'all have said. Go ahead, Kate.
Yeah, so we may be over prepared, but I just got really excited. And so I told Abby, I'm like, let's make a slideshow. Because it's fun to kind of revisit old race photos. So anyway, I'm going to just pull up my screen here and put it into slideshow mode. Hopefully everybody can see this. So yeah, so Steph just mentioned the conditions. And actually, I think Steph, what you put as the conditions for this expedition race is actually pretty common for really expedition racing almost anywhere in the country. Just considering the time of year they often happen, the terrain they often include, or country, I meant world, sorry, anywhere in the world. So in, you know, like Europe, North America, a lot of places where these races exist often have conditions like this. So I found a lot of photos that were relevant. I wanted to just say first a note about mandatory gear, because obviously every race you do is going to have a mandatory gear list. When you do a multi-day race, the gear list explodes. It is just a lot longer, and you have to carry a lot of stuff with you. So on this page, I copied the image of some of the mandatory gear items for races that I've done. And I know Abby has done similar in some of the same races. The things that you're actually required to carry at all times. So that's going to be a waterproof top, a base layer top, base layer leggings, a base layer hat, a mid layer top as well, plus shell bottoms. And I put bivy sack on there because we'll show later that that too can be a clothing item. So really what I like to notice here is there's just a lot of stuff that you have to be carrying at all times, regardless of the weather conditions. So I try to be really thoughtful about not duplicating things. So like anything that's on the mandatory gear list, I'm going to try to make that like, you know, the sort of most versatile layer of that sort that I can find so that I can use it in lots of different situations. I did add in on the side some other things that I like to bring. I may not carry them on every single stage, but just some other items that are often helpful for expedition racing. People have already talked about the wonders of buffs. They're just really versatile clothing layers. So those are great to bring. Gloves of various weights, high gaiters, low gaiters, puffy jacket. One thing I notice over the course of a race is just that your temperature often, as a sort of joke, like the longer I race, the more my temperature just is the temperature of whatever's outside. So if it's hot, I'm boiling hot. If it's even a little bit cold, I'm freezing. So it's nice to have a puffy jacket to help regulate when it's colder. You might be looking at neoprene layers or dry top or bottom layers for paddling. Abby, do you want to tell people about Mysteriosos?
I can, and I included a photo later. So Mysteriosos are these like wonder drugs. They are cold weather surfing gear that Mark Latanzi introduced me to a number of years ago. Last I looked, which was about a year ago, I could not find them anymore. So I put that asterisk because I don't know that they're made anymore. If you can get your hands on them, I think they're about the greatest piece of adventure racing gear I've ever invested in. They're relatively thin, you know, by surfing standards, right? It's a mix, I think, of neoprene and I'm blanking on the
spandex or something.
Spandex or latex. It's not latex. It wouldn't be latex, but that's what I have in my head.
Maybe nylon.
Nylon. That sounds right. So they kind of shed water. I mean, I wear them when I race direct, when I'm not walking around and I know I'm going to be outside in the cold. I wear them often when I'm paddling. I have tops and bottoms. Barbara says she has the socks and the tops. And you can move around in them pretty well. They're tight, but they're just like most people won't wear them on a trekking leg because they will make you too warm. I have definitely been known to wear them on a trekking leg because, like I said, I'm a weather wuss. I think they're amazing. So if you can get your hands on them, I would recommend it.
I Googled them too and couldn't find them. But...
Yeah.
And then I added a few other just kind of random things to the list there. I'll talk about paddle pogies later, but pogies of any kind are wonderful. Shoes for a multi-day race, you're going to need a lot of shoes. So I regularly, depending on the length of the trekking legs, I will even bring like a pair of shoes per leg because they can just get really gritty, or your foot might decide it just doesn't like that kind of shoe anymore and you need something different. As Anna said, your feet will swell over the course of a long race. So it's really important to have a little bit bigger shoes, and especially towards the end of the race, much bigger shoes sometimes. I wear a pair of biking shoes. I usually have a dedicated paddle shoe too, because I just know they're going to get wet. And then a shoe for my transition areas. I like to put Crocs on when I'm in TA just to help air my feet out. Socks and foot protection we'll talk about later, and then definitely because they're during the daytime, there's going to be sun. You know, just making sure that you have maybe arm sleeves, definitely a hat with a brim, lots of sunscreen and things like that. All right, Abby, you're
Yeah, so this is the schematic that Kate's team put together for Worlds this past year. And anytime I do an expedition race, we do something very similar. We lay out leg by leg what exactly we are going to expect, right? So what the conditions are going to be, what the discipline is going to be, what the distance estimate, what our projected time estimate is, pace estimate, calories, or caloric needs, et cetera. And then you'll see, I realized I'm not sharing my screen, so I can't use my pointer. The notes section, so what you might need for that leg that's unique, right? So in that transition, you're going to bring a dehydrated meal with you. And then the final, or that longer column next to notes is clothing. And that is when I do an expedition race, I will have clothes for each leg bagged separately in Ziploc bags and labeled. And then so I know, okay, leg 2, I'm going out on the bike. This is the clothing I need. I'm going to put that on in TA, and then anything I need to throw in my pack. And it makes it really easy to move from leg to leg without a whole lot of brain power. Kate and I wanted to find a photo of an organized TA bin, and we realized really quickly that nobody takes pictures of organized TA bins. So this is a picture of our blown up TA at Expedition Oregon last year. And anyone who's done an expedition race knows that the second the race begins, your TA bin just explodes and there's no organization to it whatsoever. So on that note, I think the more you can individually bag things per leg, that be clothing or food or other gear, the better off you'll be in terms of not having to expend the mental energy to figure out what you need. We live and die by these charts, and sometimes we'll even annotate them as the race goes on. So we know, like, okay, that leg took us a little bit longer, we need more or less here. And then you can kind of project out your finish time as well. So go ahead, Kate.
Yeah, and I'll just say too, it's funny, I started doing the organizing for expedition racing, and then I started to sometimes like use some of those tricks for 24 and 36-hour races too. So nowadays, sometimes races will give out a schematic even for a 24-hour race. And so sometimes I go back to that then as well. Okay, so sometimes it's warm and dry, and it's just wonderful when that happens. And so usually what I like to wear is, I'll focus on trekking and biking. So when I'm trekking, I'm often wearing tri-shorts with no chamois, just like, kind of compression shorts. One thing I have noticed is just as you're racing for multiple days, sometimes your body starts to like reject certain textures on your skin. And so I'll also bring just like running shorts or some other kind of like lighter shorts that I can just change from having that like compression on my legs to having more like fresh air and free feeling. I tend to run really hot. So if it's warm and dry, it's possible I will just be wearing my sports bra and then my race jersey. So for an expedition race, they're going to be usually giving you something like what you see all of us wearing, which is, some kind of like it's often a t-shirt, sometimes it's a tank top. And I just use that like a piece of clothing. So sometimes if it's really hot, I'll just wear that. But so sometimes I'll also bring t-shirts, but I find that ends up just being redundant. So I focus more, and that's not a mandatory gear item either. So instead I'll bring, long sleeve layers to layer underneath if I need those, if I get cold. Definitely bike shorts for the bike legs, just because they tend to be, sometimes I think I did one bike leg in Norway that took us 48 hours. So I definitely needed bike shorts for that because my butt was really sore anyway. And let's see, hat with a brim and sunglasses. And then I'm very fair skinned and sensitive to the sun. So I'm just like slathering sunscreen on myself whenever I have the opportunity to. I'm trying to think if there's anything I'm missing, Abby, for kind of warm and dry conditions.
I would say two things. Kate, am I echoing because you're unmuted? I'm not sure.
No, I'll mute myself just in case.
Two things. One, in terms of sun, I think Kate made a really good point. If you, as you can see in that bottom left picture, right, that was from the world champs in Wyoming, and they were like tank top pinnies that we were wearing. And I did one paddle leg where I was just wearing the pinny and a sports bra. And I didn't really think about it in terms of putting sunscreen on my back. And I got beat red by the end of it because, you know, the pinny moves differently than a shirt. So just being really mindful of that. And in terms of especially dry heat, just making sure that you are well hydrated, and like dry heat can make you hotter than I think you realize you are until it's too late. So recognizing that even if it's not that humid heat, you still want to be wearing light clothing. You still want to be taking care nutritionally and hydration wise, so that you're not kind of bunking out because of overheating.
Let me see if I can, there we go. You want to continue with this one, Abby?
Yeah, so cold, wet, and windy, which seem to be the kind of key words of any expedition race, at least at some point. Brent and I often say that we've never been as cold, we've never experienced water as cold as we did in Expedition Alaska, and we've never experienced rain as bad as we did in Itera in Ireland, which Kate was also at. In that top picture there is the heather laurel fields, just like totally saturated, hiking through creeks. Essentially, we were wearing rain pants there. And I think that's one of the differences between expedition racing and shorter races, right? 24-hour day-long races or shorter, is that on some level, you're dressing for the next stage as much as you're dressing for your current stage, because you need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself in a way that will let you continue racing, right? Like I could have raced in far less clothing in Ireland and maybe gotten through each individual leg, but there's no way I could have gotten through the entire race if I weren't wearing really protective rain gear. So not the cheapest, lightest weight rain jacket you can get, right? But one that's relatively hardy and will keep you warm, right? It's not going to keep you dry. As Anna said, you're going to sweat in it, but it will keep you warm with that extra layer. Likewise for rain pants. And they also depend on the conditions you're in, right? So here we were in relatively open conditions. We weren't bushwhacking through dense woods. Our rain pants weren't getting shredded. My rain pants were worthless 12 hours into Expedition Alaska because we were hiking through, Mountain Laurel and Devil's Club. So being mindful of what you're bringing based on the conditions. I probably have 7 layers on in that picture. And it's everything from, as Anna said, kind of a thermal tank top to a base layer to a vest. I was not wearing a puffy jacket at that point, but I was later in the race, and then the rain gear. So I think, just the big thing is recognizing that you are racing for a much longer period of time. And so you need to be mindful of protecting yourself for those conditions. And you're probably going to be changing out gear or changing out clothing more regularly because of that. So in terms of team efficiency, in terms of teamwork, something that we talk about a lot is like, if one person's changing their raincoat, everyone's changing their raincoat, right? You're not going to stop every 15 minutes for somebody to change gear. Somebody may need to be uncomfortable for half an hour, and somebody else may need to change half an hour before they're ready. But in the interest of keeping the team moving, you should figure out a way to all do it at once. Kate, do you have more to say on that?
No, I think you covered it. And a lot in terms of layering, it's stuff that people have already mentioned, nice like wool layers are wonderful, or other kind of poly material, not obviously cotton, but I think otherwise you covered everything I would say. So moving on to paddling specifically, I think just important to highlight this because this is a place that if you are at all tending towards being chilly, this is when you'll get cold, because you are sometimes just actually sitting in basically like a bathtub of water, depending on the paddle conditions for the boat that you're in. So, I think with paddling, something that I've worked on my layering for paddling for really all the years I've been racing for, because I feel like only recently did I quite get it right. And it is the pants in the middle that I've decided are my key to paddling comfort. So these, and especially for a long race. And again, I mean, you can do, like in Spain, it took us 16 hours to do one of the paddle legs. So you might be sitting in a boat for quite a long time. And your boat might be literally full of, at least a couple of inches of water. So what I have in the middle here, these are made by NRS, which you can often get a pro deal on if you're a part of various organizations like USA, right? These are waterproof pants. They're dry pants, basically. And so I can sit in water. They have a neoprene waistband and a neoprene cuffs at the feet. You can just be sitting in water and be totally dry. Unlike rain pants, actually, which even if they're Gore-Tex, if they're saturated, the water will come through eventually. So rain pants are great. I still wear rain pants for like an overnight paddle and a 24-hour race. I'll often put my rain pants on. But in an expedition where it's longer, I will often wear these instead. And what's great is you can put, like, I wear a wool layer underneath that, and I just feel like I'm in this like cozy, warm, dry cocoon, and it's really comfortable. A couple other things in the top right here, these are pogies for paddling. So inside is usually like a little fleece layer, and they actually have Velcro that goes over the paddle, and you are holding the paddle with your mittens, basically like integrating the paddle in. And that's great, again, just for chilly paddle conditions. This is my teammate Kit. She always races with paddle pogies and dry pants and a dry top and many layers underneath because she runs really cold. So, otherwise, I think just basically trying to think of wearing really anything to keep you as dry as possible, but then also like anything that will keep you warm, even if wet, because of course, as you're paddling, you're going to get wet. All right, Abby, this is our best.
Can you just go back for 1 second? And then we'll do this one. So just so everyone's aware, that top left, that's the Mysterioso top, in case you're wondering kind of what it looks like. I really hope they start making them again. Maybe we need to start a campaign. Okay, you can go forward. So this was the best slide to put together because Kate and I did not realize that we both essentially had the exact same picture of us holding a cup of coffee, wearing a space blanket or a bivy sack. I don't know, mine was day 4 in Ireland. When was yours at Worlds?
Actually, this was in Norway, day 5. So
yeah,
it was very chilly.
Yeah, so end of the race, you have lost all ability to thermoregulate. Whether or not you're in adverse conditions, you're going to probably get cold. Even if it's hot out, you will probably get cold at some point. And mine is a Sol bag from Adventure Medical Kits. Kate looks like a space blanket or a bivy sack of some sort. And they make a great extra layer. So I'm wearing mine. I'm actually in a pub in Ireland, heading out on the second half of the last trek. So you see I have like my puffy jacket under it. And it just provides that kind of, in the same way that after you finish a marathon, they give you the sheet to keep the heat in. That's exactly what these do. And there became a point on that last trek, and it was like 40 degrees, torrential rain, like 50-mile-per-hour sustained winds, where I had to take that off because I got a little bit too warm just from having that insulating layer. So yeah, so everybody should have a picture of themselves dressed in a space blanket by the end of a race.
Agreed. And I'll say, so this is at the end of Worlds in Spain this year, and I'm wearing right now my winter running tights and a puffy jacket, and it's probably 50 degrees out. It was just that my body had kind of lost that ability to regulate. So it wasn't that cold, but it just can feel cold the longer you go. I'm going to just say very briefly, I know there's a lot of things on this slide, but your feet are so important when you're doing an expedition race, just because you obviously you're on your feet for a long time, and you might be getting grit or grime or things kind of that are creating hot spots and blisters. But really importantly, in terms of clothing, is to just find a pair of socks and a pair of shoes, or many that really work well for you. Personally, I love Swiftwick. They're like a thinner kind of wool blend sock. And I wear Topo shoes for the most part, just because they are a wider toe box. And even though I don't have wide feet, I've found that just over time, kind of being on my feet a lot, they've become wider. Really helpful to also just do things like, and others have mentioned, I saw in the chat, but lubricating your feet, finding something that works well for you for that. Sometimes even taping your feet to make sure that you can prevent hot spots or blisters where you commonly get them. And then using hiking poles on long trekking stages can also really help with reducing just that wear and tear on your feet. So I wanted to, we could talk for a whole hour about foot management, maybe another day, but just to kind of notice that that's important here. Abby, do you want to summarize?
Yeah, so I think am I echoing on everyone else's too, or is it just me? I think we've hit most of these in going through the slides, but just to recap, as Kate said, you will be needing to carry a lot of gear in an expedition race, and you will have even more in your TA bins and bike boxes. So trying to make everything multi-purpose, make everything serve as many functions as possible, I think is critical to keeping your weight down. That issue of layering and delayering efficiently and coordinating with your teammates so that you can keep everybody moving. Watch for extreme conditions, right? And watch for times when the conditions aren't extreme and you're having an extreme reaction to them, and know how to take care of yourself in those situations. I think some of the other things move a little bit away from the clothing considerations, but are equally important for managing yourself during an expedition race. So where to put weight, how to deal with sleep, recognizing, right, the coldest time to sleep, the coldest time of day is actually probably the hours around sunrise rather than in the middle of the night. So thinking about when you're going to sleep as a team and how you're going to sleep, all of the things I think that are on this list are ways to keep you and your teammates kind of protected and prepared to make it through the entire race and not just each individual leg.
Awesome. Okay, so that wraps you all up on the expedition racing. I have a feeling, yeah, we're going to need a lot more of those for everyone who's doing Endless Mountains and some of the other big expedition races coming to the US this year. So let us know what you all want them to talk about, and we'll do some more of these. The last thing we've got on the list, we've got just about 5 minutes. We'll ask Anna and Barb to talk about racing in really extreme winter conditions. So we've put a scenario of a 48-hour race, below 20-degree temps. You're dealing with deeper snow, that sort of thing. And one thing, I don't know if you all have it to talk about, but one thing I want to be sure we mention is what you do for wind protection for your face, and also talking about eye protection in the snow. So if one of you can talk about those things in particular, that'd be awesome.
Barbara, do you mind if I jump in here? Okay, so wind and eye protection for the face, ski goggles are the best, that clear, and also ones that are great for snow when you don't want any skin exposed whatsoever if it's that cold. Also, full ski mask is fantastic. Basically, it's just your eyes and then your goggles are covered. And then you've got this. I want to do a quick shout out for these pants. They are For You Cycling. They are the bomb for winter biking. They are so warm and so lightweight and so cheap. You can get these for 20 bucks on Amazon. Anytime I go out to like the fat bike trails, somebody's wearing these. They're incredible. They got little zippies on the bottom. These are definitely worth the investment for like below zero or below freezing biking.
And you can bushwhack in them too, and they don't tear.
They're so durable, like, and warm, like they're almost too warm sometimes, but they're breathable too.
It's good for about 5 degrees.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep. 45 North, these are ridiculously expensive, but these are probably the best boots out there. They've got clip-ins for your biking, so winter biking boots are probably the best ones. Hand warmers and toe warmers are always solid to bring, and they're cheap. And then the last thing I would add is for anything more than ankle deep snow, I would use like really lightweight running snowshoes. Like these are Northern Lights. Anything more than like knee deep snow, I would use like full on backcountry snowshoes for racing. Anything else you would add, Barbara?
Yes, as a matter of fact. And it's interesting, we focus, I'm a fat biker, and so I go out fat biking, and going back to the whole hands and feet thing. I have the 45 North boots, but they're a special kind that that the metal doesn't transmit into the foot. Like there's some of the, that's one thing, if you're going to buy a winter specific shoe, make sure that there's as little possible connection with the metal to your feet. But that's me. And also there's this thing called Hot Feet. It's a bed liner that you can, I wouldn't recommend it for on foot, but I have really sensitive feet, so I'm not sure I would, but it's something that I find with having in my bike boot to keep my feet warm. I also use these Gore-Tex shoe covers. They're ridiculously expensive, but super durable and worth it for the rain-ons. And then I also have bike pogies. These are interesting. They're handmade, so they're a little bit different. The way they work is that they go up around your thing, and then they're fleece lined. And also there's a pocket if you need to put a hand warmer in there too. So, and I would use these below 10 degrees mountain biking. Also, I wanted to add Mountain Hardwear makes an awesome polypro layer. I'm not a fan of the bulk of fleece, and so it's a very thin polypro. It's like 80% merino, 20% tack, and I have 2 of those and wear them all the time. Also, for winter paddling, I use neoprene gloves. I don't have the pogies, but they're a neoprene glove that is a curved glove that if I have my merino liner, and then that, my hands stay very warm. And I know we're short on time, and it's layer management, and frankly, trying not to sweat. I mean, and that's just what's hard. So I have one raincoat that's really thick and has great pit zips. And I just did Pokar, and it got down to 18 degrees. And we were constantly managing each other's pit zips, it felt like. Because we were trying to do this, but then we got to the pit zips as a major thing. And +1 on the eye protection. Sometimes sunglasses work, but my limit for going out running and biking is a wind chill 10 below. So
So Barb, I've got a picture of you that I want to share, because this prompts me to ask a question.
That was 4 degrees.
Yeah. So what do you do for your hydration bladder? What do you do to keep your tube flowing?
2 things. I blow back, and I'll put vodka in.
And when you say blow back, you're saying that
I'm blowing the water back
after you
in.
drink, you blow in so
Blow
that
it
it's
back.
blowing.
Yeah, I did that at Pokar. I also, I was only out that day. I was only out that day for maybe 45 minutes, because I had my dog, because I must have had my dog because I had my leash there, her leash there, not mine. I need some sometimes, but so I normally would be wearing something over my pack. And food is also a consideration. Like you've got to be so careful about what you bring, that even when it's under 10 degrees, that it's still going to be pliable, and that you don't have to put it in your mouth and warm it up. Like I buy those tiny little oatmeal cream pies. I can shove one of those in my mouth and warm it up. I know, Abby, I know, we've had this discussion. You just don't know how I can be just so jazzed about oatmeal cream pies racing.
To each
Yeah.
her own.
I
There
know,
are
right,
plenty
right,
of
right.
waste foods that, yeah.
But croissants don't freeze that bad. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the butter that it warms up, but I'm constantly stuffing stuff in myself everywhere, and always trying to figure out pockets to keep. That's the other thing about the 4U cycling. They have pockets. You can stick stuff in the pockets. And
Stuff in my bra, even like food
Yeah,
in
me
my
too.
bra just to keep it from freezing. And then
Yeah. Totally makes sense.
You can also
Uh,
try like inside the bladder, you've got your space where your bladder sits. And if you put food between your bladder and your body,
Your back.
that tends to be a
Oh.
nice warm spot.
Nice.
I have seen insulated hoses too, but
I-
I still always blow it out, back into the bladder too.
The insulated hoses don't work below
Okay.
20.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was
I-
gonna say
and-
too. Oh, sorry, Stephanie.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if it's a shorter race and you're gonna have a transition, what I've done is to use a cooler, like to the opposite effect. So
Yep.
I'll put like heated stuff in a cooler, and then I'll put my boots or my gloves or whatever I want for the next, section that I'm gonna change into. Just put it in a heated cooler for a transition.
And
That's
stay away
brilliant.
from the fire.
Yes.
The fire that sucks you in.
Don't
Okay.
go near the fire. until
I
it
know, I know.
Keep moving, even if you're cold,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we're running low on time. I'm just going to add one more thing because I intended to mention this at the start, and I saw Barb mentioned it in the chat, that she occasionally will use hand warmers and toe warmers. I keep, whatever the brand is, the orange one, in business with a hand warmer, hot hands, with hand warmers and toe warmers. Yeah, I've come to rely on them so heavily. Something to note is that they don't work once they get wet, right? So they're activated by oxygen in the air. So once they get wet, they'll stop working. And so if you use them, and if you're going to rely on them, and I guess that's the reason to bring this up, is make sure if you plan on using hand warmers and you're sort of relying on those to keep you warm, number one, you should have a good backup. And number two, make sure you train with those and you understand how long they're effective for and what they can tolerate and what they can't. Because even I wear them in my gloves when I'm orienteering, or in my mittens, and I will put them over my wrist because then they warm the blood going into your hand and they can help keep your fingers warm. They're so effective that if you're running, unless it were extremely cold, you're going to get really hot. So I'll actually find myself sweating and have to take my hand warmers out and put them in my pocket so they don't get wet from my sweat. And then I'll have them later. But so they can be a really great tool. Just practice with them so you understand sort of how they work. They're kind of not as straightforward as they seem. And what you don't want to do is be counting on those as the way you're going to stay warm and then have them fail. I always will have a backup in my pack as well for that reason. Hand warmers in your pack to me are just some really nice security just in case.
Arm warmers are a nice add-on too, because they're lightweight and can make a significant difference. And you can, there are pictures of me racing where I have arm warmers around my wrists because I just drop them down and just leave them there and then pull them up when I need them.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be great if Women of AR had some branded arm warmers?
Wouldn't
working
that
on
be great? I need to participate so I can get some of that gear.
That's right. Get on our routine tracker. Okay, I think that's going to wrap
No,
it up
I'm
for
not
us.
gonna get on there. No one will like me then.
One more thing to track. Well,
No, you won't like what I post up, so.
you humiliate us with all of your minutes. I know. I'm sure it's true. Okay, so anything else anybody has thought to add before we sign off? Any questions that anybody wants to post up before we sign off? And again, we'll post this to the group, and I'm sure it's going to generate some questions in the Facebook group, and we'll address those as they come up. So thank you all so much for sharing your experience with us. I feel so lucky every time we get together and I see all of this just wealth of experience and knowledge, and I'm really pleased we're able to share all of that with other women getting into the sport. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you all for attending, and have a great night.